What you are seeing is not Photoshop or some fancy CGI. That is, indeed, a gorilla with hair as white as snow. This is Snowflake the gorilla, and he has a rare genetic mutation known as albinism. He isn't diseased, he's simply born like this. Always has been. This condition is not just limited to gorillas. It affects practically every known animal that uses pigments for its color. It can even affect humans. But how exactly does albinism work? Well, it all comes down to mutations.
Mutations are a change in codons, which can affect genetic information. Mutations are sometimes represented as superpowers, but in other ways, they are not. Mutations are the reason all of us have physical differences, from skin color to eye color to height. Maybe that explains why you are so short. That was a lot of information to take in, but what does it all mean? I am so glad you asked. The helicase unzips the DNA like a jacket. These two unzipped DNA strands are now what the RNA will base itself off of. A wild RNA then appears, attaching itself to the DNA strand and creating the RNA complement. A complement is not a copy. Similar to how using my resources is not cheating on the homework assignment, you now have an mRNA strand, but what do you do with an mRNA strand, you ask, dear viewer? Well, you make amino acids with it. A wild ribosome will appear and attach itself to the strand and translate the mRNA into usable proteins for the body. Other than skin color, albinism will also have a drastic effect on the eyes. You see, irises have melanin too. That makes differences between someone with brown eyes and someone with blue eyes. Might have a condition called nystagmus, which causes the eyes to rapidly shake. Additionally, extremely likely to have poor eyesight or agitism. Additionally, will be very sensitive to light of any kind due to lessened melanin able to absorb the light in the eyes, putting more stress on the pupils, and usually requires glasses of some kind. Exhibit A is some kid with pink irises, with some weird cross-eyedness going on.
Ladies and gentlemen, and this is where the mutations come in. RNA polymerase is not that bright. That means that it is bound to make mistakes, 1 in 10,000 codons, in fact. During DNA transcription, as mentioned, the RNA polymerase has a chance of incorrectly transcribing the DNA into RNA, completely changing the amino acid down the line. The mutation for albinism is a point mutation in the gene for the pigment production enzyme called tyrosinase. Within the gene sequence, there are errors. The most common mutation is a frame shift within the gene for the enzyme. But it can also include missense and nonsense. A nonsense mutation happens when an early stop codon appears in the strand, and that happens within the copper binding region and disrupts tyrosinase function and is associated with a lack of melanin production. Now this here listed is an example of a mutated strand of DNA that is within a person with albinism. Mutations in the gene encoding the pigment-producing enzyme tyrosinase are causative factors in type Ia oculocutaneous albinism, also known as OCA. Predominantly, these mutations manifest as single-base substitutions. However, we present 3 distinct frame shift mutations observed in 3 unrelated individuals with type IA-OCA. In the first case, a single-base deletion within a series of 5 guanidines induces a premature stop codon in exon 1 on one allele, and a missense mutation at codon 382 in exon 3 on the corresponding allele. The second individual exhibits a compound genetic makeup, featuring 2 separate frameshift mutations. These mutations comprise the aforementioned exon 1 single-base deletion observed in the first individual, alongside a deletion of the thymidine-guanidine pair within the sequence GT-GTG, leading to the formation of a termination codon, TAG, in exon 1 on the corresponding allele. In the third individual, a single-base insertion on exon 1 on one allele coincides with a missense mutation at codon 373 in exon 3 on the corresponding allele. Notably, the 2 missense mutations emerge within the copper binding region, potentially impeding copper binding to the enzyme or oxygen binding to the copper. These 5 diverse mutations disrupt the tyrosinase function, corresponding with a complete absence of melanin biosynthesis. Without this macromolecule, skin, hair, and even eyes will appear pale or white.
Unfortunately, this doesn't just bring on a strange appearance, it can also be deadly. Melanin is used primarily for protection against the sun's UV rays. Without melanin, creatures with albinism are more prone to skin damage, and sadly, this is what happened to Snowflake the gorilla when he passed away from skin cancer in 2003. For humans, it is always important to either stay indoors or wear sunscreen at all times with albinism. That way, it is more of an interesting feature rather than a dangerous curse. As this is a mutation, it is logical to assume that all mutations are bad, but that's not necessarily the case. Mutations can be neutral, harmful, or maybe even beneficial. Mutations are the way we as living things evolve and change over time. They are crucial to our survival, so we can adapt to whatever environment we need to. It is only when there are big, harmful mutations such as albinism when it becomes a problem. There's nothing that can be done about it. No medicine, no treatment, nothing. If you have the right mutations, it is what it is.